a hacker gets paid if they hack your contract. We get paid if we hack your contract, right? So we're like continuously training our brains over the past 18 months. We get rewarded when we find findings. I don't think we've had, at least in the last year, I don't think we've had a single report without a high finding that I can think of.
GM everyone, my name is DeGatchi and I'm here with Owen from Guardian Audits.
What's up guys, GM?
It's lovely having you here. I've been friends with you for quite some time. Very remarkable progress you've made with Guardian Audits, starting from nothing. And basically, I just want to start off the conversation with, what are you doing, TLDR?
Yeah, dude, absolutely. First of all, let me just say, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to having a new podcast to listen to. I feel like we need some more. We need some more technical podcasts. So I'm very much looking forward to this series and all the great guests that you got coming up. It's going to be a banger. So yeah, TLDR of what we're doing at this moment. At this moment, we are actually doing our 6th round of audits for GMX V2. Hopefully we can, the 6th round. Hopefully this will be the last. We always try to uncover as many critical vulnerabilities as possible, but deep down we're kind of hoping that we don't, so that we don't need to be doing another round, another 2 rounds, stuff like this for big refactors or anything like this. But at this point, we've been through the code base has been through 2 Sherlock contests, so we're getting very solid.
And that's on top of your one as well.
Yeah, and we even audited them in parallel throughout the contest as well. So the code base should be getting very solid. Should be coming up on the launch of V2. We are very excited for that. But beyond the GMX V2 work that we're doing, I'm always just putting out videos, whatever I can think of, whatever people ask me for on YouTube of, anything. We got a cool call data, decoding, manual decoding call data video coming up. It's not going to be nearly as cool as your article, but I'm excited for it. We get to go through and we basically just decode some advanced multi-call call data, stuff like that. And I guess beyond that, we have been building a community of people are interested in security and stuff like this, where you can come talk to 600 other auditors and security engineers, or just blockchain developers who are interested in security. And even sometimes we run some team contests. This is a little bit of alpha. We're just starting to call it Guardian Defender, where people come in, they have, we charge them a pot fee, and then we will basically form teams in the community of people who have taken an exam and passed it. And you get to basically audit with people from all across the world, meet new people, learn how they like to audit, and come up with a real report for a real protocol for your team, and basically be on your own audit firm in this contest, and get rewarded for findings and stuff like that. So that is pretty much everything we got going on right now.
Man, sounds like a lot, and you're juggling all this as well. So I guess we're gonna start on the little defense, the Guardian defense stuff you're starting on. So I'm guessing that's kind of for example, Spearbit, and they select their teams with the senior and whatever, but it's with randoms basically, right?
Yeah, so it is actually somewhat like Spearbit. We do have an exam that you have to take, and then
so it's not just people off the street.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they've been it's not just anybody. But what we do is we actually, so it's almost like if you had Spearbit, but you had 3 different teams created within Spearbit, and they competed against each other. So I mean, we're not doing the base pay, the ridiculous base pay that Spearbit does for, a top LSR will get 20,000 a week. We don't do that. It's sort of a cross combination of a contest, a C4 contest, but then also pairing people up into teams. So now instead of individuals competing for, their individual findings, individual rewards. It's teams competing for like team rewards, team findings, stuff like that.
Sweet. So it's like kind of like a pool as well. Do you have pre-allocated funds?
Yeah, absolutely. So the incentive structure is very interesting,
okay,
right? Because there's like, well, if you think about it, it's like if you get the incentives right, you can really knock like any sort of like contest platform or anything out of the park, right?
Yeah, sure.
And there's a lot of different ways you could configure it. You could give people base, you could, do stuff like C4 style, or you could do a combination. And then there's also like intra team. How do I split up the rewards for finding intra team, or do I just leave it up to the team? And this is something we're going to iterate on, and we've been sort of like experimenting with. But for the Defender contest we're running right now, which is for a smaller perpetuals platform, we're basically having like a base pay for a team lead. And the team lead is like, someone who's most experienced, someone who has shown, that they've made disclosures on ImmuneFi, they've placed in contests, stuff like this. And they're basically responsible for their team, right? Responsible for the report. And then, so right now, the way we have it is those people get a base allocation, and then the teams will split whatever awards they get, however they see fit. But, that's subject to change as we make improvements to the model and stuff like that.
There's so many different ways you can incentivize this stuff. And you see like all these different platforms doing the same kind of thing, like hats for like a critical vulnerability. It's basically first come, first serve. So if you find a critical on hats, it's like 80% of the pool goes to you.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty fair. If they want to do like another like round, they'll put more funds in to find another critical. But I think that's way better than like C4 structure, where it's just kind of like, okay, if someone finds the same bug, it's like a duration, then at the end they review everything, and it's like, okay, let's split it between all these people that found the same bug. I think the first come first serve incentivizes fast and efficient auditors, right? I think that's probably my favorite thing right now.
Exactly. Ideally, you want the bug to be uncovered as fast as possible. Exactly. And like there's tons of these new models coming up, right? So like there's, I forget what the new model is called, but it's like a permissioned, like you're invited to participate in it.
Yeah, like private ones.
Yeah. And then like, of course, the whole advent of contests in general, like, somewhat recent in the past like 2 years or something like that. But I'm really bullish on all these new models, just because like the more iteration, the more like capital efficiency we'll find with, what models align the incentives, instead of, what we have had for the past, 4 years or whatever is, the big firm model, which is basically, in my mind, of course, there's, big firms, they do fantastic work. They do some of the best work in the field, but they also charge like, in some people's opinion, a ridiculous amount. And they kind of have to, because there's a lot of overhead when a business gets that big, and it's just, it's not the most effective like distribution of resources, right? When you have the auditors, who are like without a doubt the most important key piece of a security product, they're only getting like 20% of the actual cost that the client is paying. The client would much rather have the entirety, or like 90% of the amount that they're paying, be forwarded to the talent who is actually doing the audit, right? So I think all of these new models and stuff like the Cantina and stuff like that are going to be addressing this, and basically making sure that the clients are actually getting a lot more, like,
getting what they deserve, basically,
out of their money. Yeah, getting a lot more auditing power out of their money.
Value kind of thing. Speaking on the big firms, let's talk about Guardian Audits and how you brought that up from its infancy to where it is now, growing strongly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're very much not a big firm by any means of by any stretch of the imagination at this point, but we are a firm, right? And so Guardian Audits really started when, about like 2 years ago, I want to say around 2 years ago, we were in the space building a DeFi protocol, and we wanted to launch, right? We're coming up on launch, and of course you need to get an audit. Like, we could not sleep at night if we didn't.
Yeah, the demand was so high and supply was just not even existent, basically. Yeah,
exactly. And so we were very much like, we are of like the entrepreneurial class of builders in the space. We don't have, we didn't raise money for this project. It's not something that we really wanted to raise money for. It was a rebate token optimizer vault. It's not something that you would want to raise money for.
Okay, right.
But yeah, so we were just, very much building in the space. We had come previously from running like a micro like SaaS app and transitioned into crypto. We were really just getting into the space, learning Solidity at the time, and saw like a cool opportunity with Olympus and all these like freaking forks that were popping up. Time was popping up around the time and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what we were working on, and we wanted to launch it, right? So we got an audit, and it was the most expensive thing that we ever bought.
Okay.
We didn't.
How much was it?
It was only a few $1,000s.
Okay, but at the time it was like.
Yeah, but at the time for us, that's in terms of business expenses. The most we had ever paid before that was an AWS bill of, a few $100.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
so that was like a very high hard cost for us that we were not used to previously, being, software entrepreneurs, where you can just write a bunch of Python and then deploy it, or like write a bunch of like React and then literally deploy a front end for free with like Netlify or something like that, right? So that was that was kind of a shock. But I mean, of course, it makes sense. If you want good people to look at your code, you're gonna have to pay a few $1,000s, and that was cheap, right? We did not get an audit that was, especially at that time. If you wanted even like a B tier firm, the quotes for our project, if I remember correctly, so we had probably, I want to say 1,200 SLOC, 1,000 SLOC. By no means a huge project.
Yeah, so lines of code.
Yeah. But the quotes were like $30,000 or something like that, which is understandable. I mean, and these were not from top tier firms. The top tier firms would have been six figures. Okay. So yeah, so these were even like the B tier firms. So
let's touch base on like what makes a top tier firm and what makes, like a B tier.
Yeah, absolutely. So
just to like break in,
a top tier firm is, in my opinion, I mean, it's word of mouth, right? People just know, right? It's the reputation. That is exactly what makes a top tier firm. There's no stats. There's no leaderboard that I know of, at least. There are probably some like, more niche ones, but there's no leaderboard or scoreboard that people point to, and it's like, okay, that's a top tier firm. But it's very much word of mouth. Anybody you ask, if you ask 20 people, and you'll get like an overlapping 3 or 4 that always come up.
Just reputation.
Those are the top tier firms. Yeah.
Okay,
and people just know.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then back to the contract quoted for 30K.
Yeah. So 30K was, a bit more than we wanted to spend. We ended up getting a firm for, a few $1,000s. Our expectations were not super high, but
beyond
for a few $1,000s, we expected something, right?
Okay, right.
So, and I won't reveal, which firm it was, but basically we got the report, and it basically looked, it was like auto-generated, dude. Like,
oh, really? Like some AI, like, chat GPT.
There's like nothing relevant.
Informationals.
Yeah, it was no critical, high, medium, uncovered, just stuff that didn't really matter.
Okay.
Like basically, if you ran Slither and then you charged $5,000 for it.
Okay, so
yeah, so that's what we got, and we actually at that point we knew, okay, the security of this protocol is in our hands now.
Yeah.
Right. So from that point, we really dove into everything, smart contract security and everything like that, learned about all the different attack vectors, and, had to make a few changes to the protocol because we realized like, oh, well, this doesn't make sense, right? For the, if attacker can make us go over the block gas limit by making so many deposits or, stuff like that. That we had to like refactor as we learned more. And so then after like another, like, that's the thing with developing in this space is like the development, it just goes on and on, because once you deploy, you can't like, you can have upgradable contracts, but if it's going to be immutable, it's just got to be right the first time. So you can't really iterate like you can in Web 2. So like, yeah, we just spent months of just like writing thousands of lines of tests and like just like being
hammering down like best practices, what's like
just being like schizophrenic,
right? Just and then after that you basically just was like, okay, wait, why don't we just create a firm? Like, what happened to that project? You just kind of ditched it and moved on to the firm? Or?
Yes. So here's the exciting part is we deployed, we launched, so we wanted to configure like a cap on, how much you could deposit in the vault just to, keep risk mitigated.
Yeah.
So what we do is we'd like, and it was also sort of a way to like garner demand, because if you limit supply, people want it that much more. Yeah. So what we did is we capped it to only like 10 grand or something just to launch the vault. The launch went perfectly. Like the cap filled up like literally within seconds. It was freaking amazing. And then we thought we were good. We're like, okay, yeah, we got the positions are in the vault. We've got the keeper's running, doing its stuff, and everything looked good. And then a few days later, I was just, I don't know, I think I was just messing around on our website. I had a little portion in the vault that I got in the vault that I, allowed myself to get in the vault just to be in the vault as well. And I went to withdraw from the vault.
Yeah.
And now, of course, at this point, nobody else had withdrawn from the vault, right? Because they all got in the vault. They're all happy. They're getting their rebase tokens optimized, and they're getting freaking 3 billion percentage APY. And like that. So
5x per day.
So I'm the first person who withdraws from the vault. And when I open up a MetaMask window, I see cannot estimate gas.
Okay. Yeah, that usually means an error.
Yeah. So at that point, I start just like, what's up? What's up with this? Is it our front end? Yeah, it's like I was looking at the front end code. I was like, what's wrong with this, right? And then I go over to the Block Explorer, check things out, and waste a bunch of gas like executing these things that just fail. And
you paid for it, sick.
I wanted to see, like, I was like, what?
Okay, yeah. And then,
but so basically what you slowly, you're just in disbelief, and then you're like, no, we're like, what? No, this thing, we tested this thing so freaking heavily and thoroughly, right? And then like you slowly, then you're like, okay, no, something is wrong here, right? I literally can't get my money out. I have no idea why. So then call up Daniel, the guy who basically launched the protocol with me. And now we're like, dude, we're like sweating. We're like, oh, dude, we got 10 grand in here. Did we just lock 10 grand in this contract, dude? And so we're like sweating on this, like, I don't know, we're on like Microsoft Teams, bro. I'm like sharing my screen, and we have no idea what's going wrong here, because that's another thing. That's another problem that needs to get solved, like debugging contracts and stuff like that. Basically, we found out that there was just this one edge case that, we had a parallel sort of accounting for, when somebody's doing this like mapping. Yeah, stuff like that.
Okay.
And we found out that, okay, well, we screwed up in this one edge case. And thankfully, thank God, we had like an emergency function that we could like force people out of the vault if need be. And we were actually able to like force people out and get their money back.
Right, like an emergency withdrawal. And then basically after this is what you're like, okay, security is a necessary thing, and it's so expensive. And I'm assuming that's why you've made sort of the model of like pay per vulnerability, because people like you, like they're just building protocols and they have no money or funding. They need these services, but they can't afford it. So I think that model makes complete sense. I assume that's why you made that model, right?
Yeah, exactly. We basically made the product that we would have wanted, right? If we were in our shoes, we were okay. I never want to buy an audit and spend even though we didn't spend that much in terms of how expensive audits could be. I want to have some sort of trust and guarantee that they're actually going to be incentivized to not just run Slither and then give you the report. Like if you run Slither and give me the report, like I'm only giving you $1,000, no more. Like,
yeah,
in fact, I should not pay you at all, right?
Right, exactly. You could do it yourself. But yeah, I totally see why you've made that model. I was thinking about that before. Like, why has he gone this route? Completely different from everyone else in the game, where they just charge, a set amount for a certain amount of time spent on it, lines of code, complexity, etc. Whereas you have just gone the complete opposite route. You're basically catering for the startup that has no capital and they need security. Otherwise, it's not gonna. They might just like destroy the whole reputation, right? So it makes complete sense. So congrats on that. Now that you've got like customers like GMX and you've been working with them for quite some time now, what do you think is different from short-term audits and long-term audits like GMX, where you've been doing it for months?
Yeah.
Because I don't think a lot of people get to experience like very long-term audits. It's usually weeks maximum.
Yeah, absolutely. Like especially just competing in contests. Sometimes like contests in Code Arena can be very short, right? Even just like 4 days. Like to me, like 4 days, that's not even an audit. Like that's just like
reading.
Yeah, that's some light reading. Yeah. So there is very much a different approach that you would take. I mean, there are of course like similarities and things you could abstract out between auditing like a single contract that's like a token contract or something dead simple, and auditing an entire system, and ultimately like what will become an entire ecosystem in GMX v2. And so I would say in terms of similarities, I mean, they're both smart contract audits. Now, in terms of things that are different, obviously the timeline, the complexity. I think if we drill down into like the unique like attacks, the attacks are so much more interesting when you have a huge code base and things are like very much tied together, interacting with each other. Like in GMX, you have these markets which are isolated in terms of like trader P&L and backing like tokens for liquidity, but they're very much intertwined in the fact that I can swap across all of these markets in the GMX ecosystem, and that can affect any one of my orders that are going to apply to any single market. So the type of vulnerabilities that you get from something like that, where you have a massive code base with so much configuration and like different things that the user can do, you wind up with these critical vulnerabilities that are very much like taking Lego blocks and like structuring things together and seeing, okay, well, I have this thing over here that does this. If I fit it together with this over here, can I get like some sort of risk-free trade where I can essentially like arbitrage the price system or something like this? And so when it comes to these larger audits, it is still, you have that aspect, of course, of like reading code on a granular level and coming up with like, oh, well, you forgot access control here. Like, of course, that stuff always applies, and that's the union or the intersection.
Gotcha.
That's the intersection of these like simple audits and complex audits. But the piece that is unique to these huge audits is thinking like sitting back and actually spending way more time not looking at the code base, but thinking about not even the code, thinking about all of the things that a user can do and thinking about how they can manipulate,
they influence it in any way.
Yeah, exactly.
And then basically through that, you basically look at all the control flows. Okay, where can a user change an input and directly influence something? And then try and think of the whole context like as a macro and see what puzzle pieces you can kind of like click together. Maybe they don't have the right, interactions and it doesn't work, it just fails in like a proof of concept, right? But then eventually maybe one of them will click. You have some critical vulnerability. I'm guessing that's kind of what it's like, right?
No, that's exactly what it's like. And then we get, really excited because we get paid per vulnerability.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the best approach because the criticals are the most, most important. Like you'll lose all your money, lose your reputation, project's over basically. And I wonder if it's even a good strategy if you have like a short audit, like a week, I wonder if it's good to just quickly look over the flows where you can input and then think of a macro of, okay, this again, like the contract and what connects together with it. Maybe that would be better for auditors instead of just going through the code and be like, okay, what can I exploit within this contract alone?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's very much as the lines of code in a code base scale up, you move along the spectrum from spending most of your time reading code to spending most of your time thinking about the code base, not looking at the code base.
And I think like the more lines that are introduced, the more complexity, and the more complexity means more like margin for error, right? So there's even more attack surfaces and whatnot. Maybe they even miss the simple things because there's so many things to remember and read. When you're auditing something, what did you wish you had with you while you're auditing? Like maybe like an assistant or some kind of tool that you can generate, that you wish you had.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've actually only recently sort of come up with a system that I wish I was using like a year ago and throughout the past year. And the system is basically just recording all of the things that you notice or experience, right? Very simple. Like, of course, like I have like taken notes and stuff like this, but it's never been organized in a system and specifically in a way such that other people can replicate everything that I've learned and the way that I like to audit based on everything I've learned. And this is something that has been like, it's something you don't think about when you're starting off as an auditor. Like when you're starting off, you're way more interested in just finding critical vulnerabilities in general.
Yeah, like progress.
Yeah, you don't really think about like, okay, how can I empower other people to find these critical vulnerabilities or potentially even more interesting bespoke critical vulnerabilities without like me having to necessarily do that, but being able to give them everything that I've learned about this code base and everything that I've learned about auditing in general and the general like attack vectors, external calls, manipulation, things like this. How can I distill all of that down and give it to other people as like a system that is like very easy to execute and operate and almost like deterministic in nature, where if you just follow the system, then you will uncover very interesting exploits, right? And it's a very hard thing to do, but that's something that I've started doing, and I did a short thread on it, but that is the tool that I wish I had been using. And basically the way it works is at this point in iteration, like we'll continually be improving it, but like having, every time you notice a new sort of class of vulnerability, like, there are so many common things that go wrong, just documenting it and then thinking of a system. Like, what can I do to make sure that I always uncover this thing?
Like a step-by-step guide to make. Yeah, I got you.
And
it's kind of like a dictionary.
From there, yeah, exactly. From there, it could almost, a lot of these could just be automated, like through, like smart static analysis or
like
whatever you've got cooking. And
I mean, if it's just step by step, like if you make a sort of methodology to find this stuff, it could like so easily make a heuristic based system to just automate that, or even just like analyze like, oh, this has the potential to do this, right? Not even like find it, but at least alerting you of it. I think definitely that could be a massive like game changer, especially when you've recorded like dozens of like vulnerabilities, hundreds. Like then you have all in one summary tool just to help you. Oh, yo, right here, check it out.
Yeah, dig here, exactly. Yeah, and I mean it's not foolproof by any means.
Of course, it's just time efficiency.
The rules that will be like, the systems recorded here are very much easily applicable to the smaller code base. But then when you scale up, you get more lines of code. The exploits become very much unique to the code base. And so that's very much the challenge here is how can I develop a system that can apply to like even these really complex code bases with unique exploits particular to these code bases? How can you develop a system where other people can just follow the system and then uncover those vulnerabilities? And of course, maybe no perfect system like that exists, but how could you give people exactly the tools that they need to be able to do that? And then in my mind, that's really the key to being able to scale a really, really powerful auditing force, like even just in the community. Like as soon as I get that system down, like you better believe I'm going to be releasing videos about it, teaching people how to use it. So
of course. Yeah, you'd just be like, you can bring on interns, man, and just teach them through that. Anything kind of like that. It's just easy onboarding, ramp them up to speed. All your years of experience is just compiled into one good resource. And if they just apply it, read it, and then apply what they read, then man, accelerating. So I assume that's what you would do if you restarted. It's just record. Yep. Yeah, perfect. So let's say we already know how you differentiate. I want to know, how did you get the partnership with GMX? Like, did you have a reputation or leverage at the time, or what happened?
Yeah, so I think I mean, one day really they just reached out to us.
Oh,
it's
really?
kind of crazy, but yeah, it's crazy how things happen. But I think they either heard about us from somebody else we previously worked with, and they really liked the paper vulnerability model, and then they heard about us through the grapevine from that. But regardless of how exactly they first heard of us, basically they were shopping around for initial auditors as they were like very early in the synthetics process, which is now turned into just GMX v2. And they basically wanted an early audit, and then it's basically turned into like us continually coming back, doing more audits as they continue to, at the beginning, they were very much still like building out the system.
Yep.
And then now after, 6 rounds, we're just now like patting down the final like remediations that they've made for all the vulnerabilities we've uncovered and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm pretty like coming from GMX and they're building, like reiterating every time. It makes sense for them to come to your business with your model where they're basically paying for each vulnerability. They're not paying, 20,000 for just a reiteration of a function. They're paying like, okay, we fucked up here. Let's fix this. Thanks.
Yeah.
Let's pay you. It's like contract work basically, but like the service is basically guaranteed or they don't pay, which is actually very, attractive. And I'm surprised not a lot of firms do that. Yeah, very unique strategy. And maybe some people will start picking it up, trying to steal from you.
Yeah, I mean, I welcome people to use the model. It's a great model. It's a great offer for clients. But I mean, of course, I think like trust, he pointed out, and he had a tweet. There are like several downsides, of course, with the model, like as there are with anything. Like, of course, if you're not getting paid up front a certain amount, you have no idea how much you're about to make.
Exactly.
And it does make it hard if you're trying to build out a team, right? If you if you need to pay people a certain amount, but you don't know exactly how much.
Yeah.
And the way we've sort of worked with that thus far is so the way it works is there's like a down payment, which in the beginning was extremely small. It was only like $1,000 or something like this, just to be like, okay, you are actually going to get our audit, right? Like you're booked out on our calendar. We've actually got like some money from you. You're serious about this. We're serious about this. Okay. And then, after whatever we're going to cover, then we, decide whatever the fees are. And we've never not found something. We always make more in vulnerability fees than the down payment every single time thus far. So that has not been an issue as of yet. But so our response to being able to scale up and have some initial like guaranteed amount has been to, of course, raise the down payment and the minimum down payment. And of course that depends on the size of the code base and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but
sure.
yeah, very much still the bulk of what we get paid is from paper vulnerability.
Yeah.
But
and you always find something.
Always. Like we have I don't think we've had, at least in the last like year, I don't think we've had a single report without a high finding.
Oh, really? Wow.
That I can think of. There was one where we only had like 2 mediums, and that was like a really small like token contract.
Okay, right. Kind of like a fault or something.
But anything that's non-trivial, yeah, there's literally no reports that don't have at least a high. Most of them have, multiple highs, multiple criticals. But that's dependent on the code base that that you get. Obviously, if you give us Aave as it is right now, we're going to have a very tough time finding a high vulnerability. But we've gotten, lucky with, the clients that we take on. Like,
man, I don't know if that's luck. Like, I guess it is part luck and part skill, because you're consistently finding them. So I would definitely say that that's skill. But there's always
it's also incentives too, because like it just keeps us looking that extra day. We just spend that extra hour on this function because we really do want to uncover that finding so we can get that payout, right? And I can recall several instances where, like, since we charged per vulnerability, like we were already like confident of the system, but we just kept looking because we want to get that money, man. So we spend an extra day, and like, what do you know, like something just comes out of it, and it's like actually like a bad like high finding. And that's what security is you just have to go those extra days, right? Even if you think the system is good, you've got to be incentivized to look back. And if I'm only getting paid a base amount and it doesn't change no matter what I uncover, I'm going to stop. If I'm confident in the system, I'm done. But you got to keep coming back.
Auditing is also very creative, and I don't think people would instinctively think of that auditing is actually very creative if you want to be an elite auditor, because it's all thinking about possibilities, and there's so many possibilities of external contracts. If we're talking criticals, right? Highs and like mediums, you don't necessarily have to be as creative, but if you want to be elite, you've got to think of, you really got to think outside the box in a literal sense, because the contract could be the box, and then outside of it, is where all the dangers lie, like a flash loan and coming in.
The user is the unknown.
Exactly. Yeah. Like even coming in with like a black hat mindset is like the best. It's like, okay, if you saw this on chain, how would you want to attack this, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, to your point, like it exactly changes your mindset into exactly the mindset you need to have, right? A hacker gets paid if they hack your contract. We get paid if we hack your contract, right? So we're like continuously training our brains over the past 18 months. We get rewarded when we find findings. We just continuously optimize for that.
I think that actually makes you very powerful, because I think with your company, you can incentivize black hats to even come on board. If I was a black hat and I found, a critical bug, I'd be like, oh, wow, I don't want to like exploit this, because then I'll have to look over my back for the rest of my life. And if I exploit it, your life is basically over. But I think it really is one of the best models. And even if someone listens to this or a protocol, I think they should definitely go with you, because, if they don't have funding, you pay what you can. If you do have funding, you're still getting the most value out of any team. Like, sure, they're not trail of bits, for example, but you're guaranteeing basically value for money, which is exactly what protocols want in early stages, at least. So I think even having that as like a testimonial or telling your story is quite insightful for the customer, because I didn't know about how you started before this, and after hearing it, it makes complete sense. And like, you were in the customer's shoes once, and you know what they're needing, missing, and you're providing a solution for a problem that you had, basically, which is, it's quite good. Actually really impressed. So I wonder, how do you start building like this clientele? Like, let's say a new auditing firm comes out. If you were to start it all over again, I guess what would you do differently to kind of accelerate the process and build this reputation and, build partnerships and whatnot?
Yeah, if I were to start all over, I would do a few things differently for sure. First of all, I would compete in a lot of contests. This is one thing that I actually I'm frustrated about, because I really want to compete in a lot of contests, but like we just have like audits we need to do. Like, and it's kind of frustrating. Like we want to, hopefully take our foot off the gas a little bit and have time to compete in more contests as like a team, or even if, individuals are free, they want to do it, and, just put our name out on the leaderboard. But I think certainly if we were starting all over, that's the first thing I would do, is get like 8, 10, a dozen like top placing positions under our belt. So that way first of all, you have the confidence in yourself.
Yeah.
And that will just do wonders. If you truly believe that you are the best auditing team for this project, you're going to be very effective at selling them, right? And getting their audit, because with everything that if you were standing in the customer's shoes, you would buy, right? Because you're just like, I know, like, guys, you trust me, you don't want to go with X big name. You want to go with us. Like I just know this. Like, you're not going to get what we're going to give you if you go anywhere else. If you have that kind of confidence, that like contests like that will get your confidence boosted immediately, right? If you're able to score really highly. Second of all, of course, you get to say that, okay, look, our team, we scored, top 3, top 2, top place in X number of contests. We have experience in these code bases.
Yeah.
Look, here's our findings. They're publicly verifiable. Look, nobody else found this finding that we found in XYZ. And you're on the leaderboard, right? People know the leaderboard. So that's the first thing I would do. I would go so hard on contests. And I actually think it would be like, especially in this time in contests, there's not too many like big names competing in contests as of right now. So I think there's an opportunity for new folks who want to get in and really make a name for themselves. Definitely go and start tearing it up in contests. And that will be like your starting sort of credibility, and that will get you really started. And then from there, it's, in my opinion, it's all downhill, right? And then after that, I would start putting out so much content, put out like the most valuable content from everything you've learned along the way, and basically just build up your network, right? Build up connections, build up your name in the space, so that people know that like this person is, just make security related with your name, right? And then, people will know, and every day the circle will grow bigger, and until it gets to a point where you just can't really stop it. And then you just have so many people hitting you up for security services and security audits that it's hard not to build out a team if that's what you want to do, and start to scale things up and go on from there. But yeah, those are the two things. And really, I think that, you could get into all sorts of things like charging and stuff like that. It really doesn't matter. I think if you do just those two things and you focus on just those two things, you'll build an amazing reputation, an amazing brand, an amazing firm in space. You'll work with amazing clients over time. And yeah, those are the only two things that you really need to focus on.
Yeah, once you get like the initial clients, basically, you have that reputation and basically credentials of a referral in a way. So they're going to be connected to more protocols, and then they're going to refer you if you did a great job, like quality of work. And I think some people just try and go in and find as much as they can in a short amount of time, but it is really like a grind, and you got to think outside the box, as I said, and provide a quality report so they can understand, but also providing good information so how they can upgrade in the future. because that's what they're there for. They want to see where they're fucking up, want to see how they can prevent this in the future, and that's really what they're paying for, right? So if you can do those things, educate, and it's basically education, right? You're teaching them to code better in a more secure way. And I think you're doing this amazing job with the content. Like, you've just exploded in popularity on Twitter, and you're just releasing content after content. It's so valuable, and I think a lot more people should definitely watch your stuff, because like not a lot of people provide content, and people think content diminishes their kind of like edge, but it brings you a new edge, right? And it also, that edge is in, you know, networking, and it's also in promotion, because when new people come in or want to switch fields or want to learn something, even like the veterans, they might not even know about it, and then they look at it, they share with their friends, and then it's just a never-ending spiral on the internet. I think you've done a tremendous job on that, and I think it attributes a lot to your success as well. Keep doing it. I also wanted to know, if you're basically getting into auditing and someone approaches you for a private audit, I guess when you finish it, how do you promote yourself after that, aside from like the referrals and all that stuff?
Yeah, are you saying like to that client again for like recurring services or
I guess,
something like that?
Recurring, and then if you're trying to promote yourself as a personal brand or whatever, and you've only done private audits, how do you kind of expand from just that one person or small circle that you established?
Yeah. Excellent question. So in my opinion, really the only way to market yourself, besides, you know, the first two things we talked about, which is to create content and score highly in public contests, I think actually the third and perhaps the most important of those three is to do the best job that you possibly can. And it's a very boring answer. It's like almost the obvious answer, but people don't. But like, yeah, like it's the obvious answer, but it's so powerful. Obviously, you'll think of it, but you won't really value it nearly as much as it ought to be. It literally becomes exponential over time. Like if you do the best audit, you build a handcrafted like test suite for the team that, you know, you didn't even say you're going to do that. You show them all of these fuzzing tests that you
Beyond
do
and
when you
above.
deliver.
Above and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. And you write like really well handcrafted POCs for every single finding. Maybe you even go and you record videos that explain and walk through some of the more complex findings. We did that for our third report for GMX. We have some very complex findings. So I recorded some videos and went through and walked through on a whiteboard. We walked through those findings, and those are attached with the report. Like you go absolutely above and beyond. You put, you know, so many hours and focus into the audit. Big firms can't compete with that. Big firms have to pay engineers like, you know, I don't know, whatever they pay them. The market rate, they only work 5 days a week. It's not their brand that they're putting behind the audit, right? Yeah. I mean, these are very highly trained professionals, and they're exceptionally good at what they do, no doubt. But nothing will beat like extremely intelligent people who are also extremely invested in the product, right? So if it's my brand and I'm putting my name on this report, and like it's Guardian Audits, and I feel as if I am an owner of Guardian Audits, you know, whether I be just a person on the team or someone who is, you know, actually a founder, like if I really feel in line and like actually care if this audit is the best that it could possibly be, I'm just going to give so much more than you're going to get anywhere else, right?
Follow-up question to that. Let's say you did build a team and you wanted people in your team to have the same mentality, but they're not a founder. How would you go about that then?
Yeah, the pay-per vulnerability model definitely helps with this, as like if we're talking about incentives, like if we charge a client per vulnerability, we're going to pass on the same incentive to you. So you're actually going to get paid more if you uncover more findings, right? Because we're going to make money, you're going to make more money. So that's like a very baseline level of, you know, it doesn't have to do so much with, you know, taking ownership in the brand, but that's like baseline surface level. Okay, you're incentivized to actually uncover stuff. Beyond that, when it comes to buying into the brand, I mean, this is very much on the edge of what I'm still like learning and getting better at. I'm very much like a novice entrepreneur, if you could even call me an entrepreneur at this level. Say, yeah. But we're very early on in the game. Like, I don't even think that I'm
still even at the level.
Like, I feel like we don't even really have a company yet. I'm not even really an entrepreneur yet. I'm more at this point still just an auditor. I'm like an independent auditor with an amazing team. That's all we have at this point. We don't have like a company per se. Of course, we have a brand and all this, but exactly like you're talking about, at the point where we hit that threshold where we have like a whole team that is really invested in the brand, that's when we have a company. And that's something that I am very much still learning and in the process of, figuring out, okay, how do we, get people to really feel in line with the vision that we have set out and the values that we want to take and the work that we want to do in the space. And what we want to see actually come out of all the work that we're doing. That's something we're very much working on. But I think, from my perspective so far, it comes down to hiring people and bringing people onto the team that agree with the culture of what you're trying to achieve and really agree with the content that your brand puts out. I think that the content that I put out on my YouTube is actually very important for this, for attracting exactly those people who want to just give the most value that they possibly can, like literally lay out everything that I know on YouTube, just give it away. And we attract those people. And ultimately that's going to help, us build an amazing brand off the back of that. But it is going to take like years of just continuing to do that and a lot of learning on my part. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. You would have to basically filter out, see who you gel with, catch a vibe with, and just see if they are like consistent in their efforts as well. For example, when you're doing the whiteboard videos, you would also want them to do it, right? So they can kind of like uphold those values. And if they're not, you're going to put them in, like give them a little nudge. Like, you don't want to be around people that are not going to call you out when you're in the wrong, right? You don't want yes sayers around you. It's just going to hold you back. One last thing I wanted to ask was, how do you schedule your day and basically have time for managing content, managing, I guess, your social life, if you even have one, like, friends and family, right? But then like, exercising and then running, guarding audits and managing maybe multiple audits at once or just single audits. I don't know how that goes, but yeah, just how do you schedule your day really?
Yeah, absolutely. It very much varies, if we're working on a project or if we have, a little bit of time in between a project to focus on content or something like this. But yeah, we do one audit at a time, just so like that really drills down into, we really believe that if you deliver the best audit over the quantity of audits, that it's going to produce completely different results over time. But in terms of like my schedule, I mean, usually so this is one thing I actually changed recently that has had a massive benefit, is that I no longer have like an alarm to wake up, because I was just like auditing later and later into the night with every day. And then, waking up at like still like, 9 in the morning and just like literally not getting enough sleep because I can't like fall asleep in time. And it was just, dude, it was awful. So removed the alarm to wake up and added an alarm to go to sleep. And that has like completely changed my life.
Oh, okay.
Dude, I feel so much better. Like, I used to wake up and I thought it was just normal to feel like absolute. Are you allowed to curse on this podcast?
Or? Yeah, why not?
All right, yeah. No, I just felt like absolute shit. Like every time I woke up, and it was like that for so long that I just thought it was normal.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. I've never heard of putting an alarm to go to bed, but that makes total sense. Because I'm also the same. You just get completely laser focused in work and you forget about time. All flies by, like, damn, 16 hours gone already since I woke up. And then it's like, 2 hours, 4 hours past your bedtime, 4 a.m., something like that. You just completely destroyed your sleep schedule until, you do an all-nighter or just go to bed early from some like melatonin or sleeping tablets. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. That's interesting. I might actually try that.
Yeah, dude, definitely highly recommend if I mean, I bet you're just like me. You just like get engrossed in something and lose track of time.
Yeah, I feel like all of us do that when we're in tech and really passionate about something, right? But it's been such a pleasure talking to you and understanding where you've came from and how Guardian Audits has been built. I think that's been like an amazing story, and I think a lot of people are going to value this. Yeah, it's just been a pleasure, man. Appreciate you coming on.
Dude, absolutely likewise. This was a blast. And dude, honestly, I said at the beginning, I'm going to say it again. I'm really looking forward to the other episodes you got on. I know you got some really cool people coming on this podcast. So I'm looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, well, there we go. Take care, everyone.